Can you kiss me? I want to make him jealous, she whispered to the most dangerous man in the room. And in 3 seconds, her life would never be the same. The bass pulsed through the crystal lounge like a second heartbeat, but Kioma couldn't hear it over the roaring in her ears. There he was. Across the velvet-draped VIP section, Daniel, her Daniel, had his arm wrapped around a woman whose laughter was too loud, too perfect, too everything Kioma had tried to be. 3 months. It had been 3 months since he'd looked at her the way he was looking at that stranger now. Kioma's fingers tightened around her champagne glass. The bubbles had gone flat, just like the promises he'd whispered into her skin. You're my forever, Chi. My African queen. Lies, all of it. She'd flown from Lagos to Seoul, chasing a dream, him, only to become a footnote in someone else's love story. Her chest ached with the kind of pain that made breathing feel like a betrayal. No more, she whispered to herself, downing the champagne in one bitter gulp. If he wanted to flaunt his new prize, then fine. Two could play that game. Her eyes scanned the room, searching for... what? Revenge? Validation? A distraction sharp enough to cut through the humiliation burning her throat? Then she saw him. Jinwoo hadn't wanted to come tonight. The crystal lounge was too bright, too loud, too full of people who smiled with knives hidden behind their teeth. But business was business, and Park Min-joon had insisted they meet here in the open where suspicion would drown in champagne and that house music. He moved through the hot crowd like a shadow. Black suit, black eyes, black reputation. People parted without realizing why. Some primal instinct in them recognized danger when it wore human skin. Min-joon was late. Typical. Jin-woo claimed a corner table, his back to the wall, his gaze cataloging exits, threats, opportunities. The scar along his jawline itched beneath his collar, a reminder that softness got you killed in his world. Then someone stumbled. A woman, no, the woman, stood 3 feet away, staring at him like he was the answer to a question she hadn't meant to ask. Her dress was deep purple, the color of bruised plums, and clung to her curves like a second skin. Her eyes, dark, desperate, determined, locked onto his. She was stunning, and she was walking straight toward him. Jinwoo's hand instinctively moved toward the gun holstered beneath his jacket. But she wasn't a threat. She was something far more dangerous. Kioma's about to make a choice that will change everything. Have you ever done something reckless just to prove you were still alive? Drop your story below. Let's talk about the moments that break us open. Kioma didn't think. Thinking was what had gotten her hurt in the first place. Too much analyzing, too much hoping, too much trying to be enough. She stopped in front of him, her heart hammering so loud she was certain he could hear it. I need a favor, she said, her voice steadier than she felt. The man tilted his head slightly, his expression unreadable. Up close, he was even more devastating. Sharp cheekbones, full lips pressed into a thin line, and eyes so dark they seemed to swallow light. There was something predatory about him, something that screamed danger, but Kioma was too far gone to care. A favor, he repeated slowly, his accent wrapping around the English words like silk over steel. From a stranger. Yes. She swallowed hard. Can you kiss me just once? I need to make someone jealous. For a moment, nothing. He simply stared at her, those obsidian eyes searching her face for something. Weakness, maybe. But Kioma held his gaze, refusing to flinch. Then, without warning, he stood. He was taller than she'd expected, broad-shouldered and imposing. He stepped into her space close enough that she could smell his cologne, something dark and woody that made her head spin. You're serious, he murmured, his voice low, almost amused. Very. His hand came up slowly, fingers brushing her jaw with a gentleness that contradicted everything else about him. Kioma's breath hitched. Across the room, she could feel Daniel watching. Good. Let him watch. Let him burn. Jin-woo leaned down, his lips a breath away from hers. Then let's give him a show, he whispered. And he kissed her. It wasn't supposed to feel like this. Kioma had expected something performative, quick, forgettable. But the moment his mouth touched hers, the world tilted. His lips were soft but demanding, claiming hers with a confidence that made her knees weak. His hand slid to the back of her neck, holding her there, not roughly but possessively, like she was something precious he refused to let fall. Kiyoma's hands found his chest, her fingers curling into the fabric of his suit. The kiss deepened, and suddenly it wasn't about Daniel anymore. It wasn't about revenge or jealousy or pain. It was just them. When they finally pulled apart, Kiyoma was trembling. Jinwoo's thumb brushed her lower lip, his eyes darker than before, something dangerous flickering in their depths. "Was that enough?" he asked quietly. She couldn't speak, couldn't breathe, couldn't think past the fact that her entire body was on fire. Behind her, she heard a glass shatter. Daniel. Kiyoma stepped back, her hand flying to her mouth as reality crashed down around her. What had she done? She blinked rapidly, trying to find words that made sense. "Thank you. That was... I have to go." She turned, but Jinwoo's hand caught her wrist, gently but firm enough to stop her. "Wait. I can't." Her voice cracked. "This was a mistake. I shouldn't have..." "Kiyoma." She froze. "How do you know my name?" He nodded toward her purse, where her ID badge from the hotel she worked at dangled from a keychain. "Right, of course." "You asked me for a favor," Jinwoo said, his tone maddeningly calm. "Now you owe me one." "I don't owe you anything," she shot back, yanking her wrist free. "It was just a kiss." Was it? The question hung between them, heavy and loaded. Kiyoma's pulse hammered in her throat. No, it wasn't just a kiss. They both knew it. But admitting that meant admitting she'd felt something real with a complete stranger, something she'd never felt with Daniel, even after a year together. "I have to go," she repeated, softer this time. Jinwoo studied her for a long moment, then released her. "If that's what you want..." It wasn't. But Kiyoma didn't trust herself to stay, so she turned and walked away, her legs shaking with every step. Behind her, she heard Daniel's voice, sharp and accusing. "Kiyoma, what the hell was that?" She didn't stop, didn't look back. For the first time in months, she didn't care what Daniel thought. But she couldn't stop thinking about the stranger's lips on hers, or the way his hand had cradled her neck like she was something worth holding on to. Jinwoo watched her disappear into the crowd, his jaw tight. He'd been kissed before, plenty of times. But never like that. Never with such raw, unguarded desperation. She'd kissed him like she was drowning and he was air, and God help him, he'd wanted to pull her under with him. "Boss!" Jinwoo turned to find Minjun standing beside the table, his expression carefully neutral. "Was that necessary?" Minjun asked. "No." "Then why?" "She asked," Jinwoo said simply, sitting back down. But his hands were still shaking, hidden beneath the table where no one could see. He didn't do this. He didn't get involved. He didn't let strangers get under his skin. But Kiyoma, whoever she was, had just rewritten every rule he'd spent a decade building. And he had a feeling she had no idea what she'd started. Kiyoma made it halfway to the exit before the lights went out. Screams erupted, glass shattered, and then gunshots. Her body moved on instinct, dropping low as chaos exploded around her. People shoved past, trampling toward the doors. Kiyoma's heels caught on something and she stumbled, hitting the floor hard. Then a hand grabbed her arm, hauling her upright. "Come with me, now." "Jinwoo." "What's happening?" she gasped. "No time. Move." He pulled her through a side door she hadn't noticed, down a narrow hallway that smelled like cigarettes and spilled liquor. Behind them, more gunfire. Shouting in Korean, Jinwoo's grip on her wrist was ironclad. "Wait, my purse? Forget it." They burst through an emergency exit into an alley. A black car was already waiting, engine running. Jinwoo shoved her into the back seat and climbed in after her, slamming the door. "Drive," he barked in Korean. The car lurched forward. Kiyoma's chest heaved, adrenaline spiking through her veins. What the hell just happened? "You were in the wrong place at the wrong time." "That's not an answer!" Jinwoo finally looked at her, and for the first time she saw something other than calm in his eyes. Anger. No. Worry. "There are people who want me dead," he said bluntly. "And now they've seen you with me, which means you're a target." Kiyoma's blood ran cold. "What?" "I'm taking you somewhere safe." "Safe? I don't even know you. Then let me introduce myself properly. His voice was cold now, detached. My name is Jin Woo. I run one of the largest syndicates in Seoul. And that kiss you asked for? It just painted a target on your back. Kiyoma stared at him, her mind refusing to process the words. Syndicate? Target? Mafia? No, she whispered. No, this isn't... I'm sorry, Jinwoo said quietly. And for a moment, he almost looked like he meant it. But until I know you're safe, you're staying with me. The car sped through the night, and Kiyoma realized with dawning horror that she'd just traded one nightmare for another. Jinwoo's penthouse was cold, sterile, all glass and steel and sharp edges like the man himself. Kiyoma stood in the center of the living room, arms wrapped around herself, still wearing that stupid purple dress that now felt like a costume from another life. Sit, Jinwoo said, gesturing to the couch. I'd rather stand. Kiyoma, don't. Her voice cracked. Don't say my name like we're friends, like you didn't just ruin my life. Jinwoo's jaw tightened, but he didn't argue. Instead, he poured 2 glasses of whiskey and set one on the coffee table in front of her. Drink. It'll help. I don't want your help. I want to go home. You can't. Not yet. Kiyoma laughed bitterly, the sound harsh and broken. Why? Because some gangster might come after me? This is insane. I just wanted to make my ex jealous. That's it. That's all it was supposed to be. And instead, you kissed me. The words landed like a slap. Kiyoma's eyes burned, but she refused to cry. Not here, not in front of him. I didn't know, she whispered. I know. Silence stretched between them, thick and suffocating. Finally, Kiyoma sank onto the couch, her legs giving out. She picked up the whiskey and downed it in one gulp, the burn a welcome distraction. Tell me about him, Jinwoo said quietly, sitting across from her. Why do you care? Because you asked a stranger to kiss you just to hurt him. That's not nothing. Kiyoma's hands trembled around the empty glass. His name is Daniel. We met in Lagos. He was there for business. He said he'd never met anyone like me, said he wanted to build a life with me, so I left everything. My family, my job, my home. I moved here for him. Her voice broke. And 3 months later, he told me I was too much, too loud, too African. Like that was something to be ashamed of. Jinwoo's expression darkened, but he said nothing. I rebuilt myself once, Kiyoma continued, tears finally spilling over. After my father died, I had to become strong for my family. I learned to bury the pain, to smile through it. And I thought I could do it again. But tonight, seeing him with her, I just wanted to feel powerful. Just once. She looked up at Jinwoo, her vision blurred. Instead, I feel like I'm drowning. Jinwoo stood and crossed the space between them. He knelt in front of it, her, his hands resting gently on her knees. You're not drowning, he said softly. You're surviving. There's a difference. Kiyoma met his gaze, and for the first time since the kiss, she saw past the coldness. Saw the scars, not just the one on his jaw, but the invisible ones that lived in his eyes. What happened to you? She whispered. Jinwoo's hands tightened slightly. I lost someone too. Someone I couldn't protect. And I swore I'd never let anyone get close enough to hurt me again. Then why are you helping me? He didn't answer, but his thumb brushed her knee, a touch so gentle it shattered something inside her. Stay tonight, he said finally. Tomorrow we'll figure out the rest. Kiyoma nodded, too exhausted to fight. And when Jinwoo stood to leave, she caught his hand. Thank you, she whispered. He looked down at their joined hands, something vulnerable flickering across his face. Don't thank me yet, he murmured. I'm not a good man, Kiyoma. Maybe not, she said softly. But you're a good man to me. Jinwoo's breath hitched, and for the first time in years he didn't pull away. In-woo and Kiyoma are both running from pain, but finding each other instead. When have you discovered that the person you least expected became exactly who you needed? Share your moment below. Morning light filtered through the floor-to-ceiling windows, painting the penthouse in shades of gold. Kiyoma woke to the smell of coffee. She'd fallen asleep on the couch, still in her dress, and someone, Jinwoo, had draped a blanket over her. The kindness of it made her chest ache. She found him in the kitchen, dressed in a simple black t-shirt and jeans, his hair slightly mussed. He looked human, less like a crime lord and more like a man who hadn't slept. "Morning," he said without turning around. "Morning." He slid a mug of coffee across the counter toward her. "Milk, no sugar, I guessed." Kiyoma blinked. "How did you—" "You ordered it that way at the lounge, before everything." He'd been watching her. The thought should have been unsettling. Instead, it felt coy. She took the mug, letting the warmth seep into her hands. "Thank you." They stood in silence for a moment, the air between them charged but not uncomfortable. "I meant what I said last night," Jinwoo said finally. "About not being a good man." "And I meant what I said too." He turned to face her, his expression unreadable. "You don't know me, Kiyoma." "Then tell me." "Why?" "Because last night you kissed me like I mattered, and then you saved my life." "So, yes, Jinwoo, I want to know you." Something shifted in his eyes, a crack in the armor he wore so carefully. "I was 7 when my father was killed," he said quietly. "Shot in front of me by a rival gang. My mother, she didn't survive the grief. I grew up in this world because I had no choice, and I learned early that caring about people gets them killed." Kiyoma set down her mug and moved closer. "You cared about someone once. The person you lost." Jinwoo's jaw tightened. "Her name was Su-min, my younger sister. She was 17. Got caught in a firefight meant for me." "Jinwoo, I held her while she died," he continued, his voice flat, emotionless. "And I swore I'd never let anyone close enough to become a target again. I built walls. I became what everyone expected. Cold, ruthless, untouchable." "But you're not," Kiyoma whispered. "You're not untouchable." "No." He looked at her, his eyes raw. "Apparently, I'm not." Kiyoma reached up and touched the scar on his jaw, her fingers tracing the raised line gently. "Where did this come from?" "A knife fight. 3 years ago." "Does it hurt?" "Not anymore." She let her hand fall to his chest, feeling his heartbeat beneath her palm, steady, strong, alive. "You're allowed to feel things, you know. Being strong doesn't mean being empty." Jinwoo caught her hand, his thumb brushing her knuckles. "You say that like it's simple." "It's not, but maybe it's worth trying." He stared at her for a long moment, and then, slowly, carefully, he leaned down and kissed her forehead. It was chaste, tender, nothing like the fire of last night. But it meant everything. "Stay with me today," he murmured against her skin. "Just today. Let me pretend I'm someone who deserves this." Kiyoma's eyes stung. "You don't have to pretend." When he pulled back, there was a small, almost shy smile on his lips. "Has anyone ever told you you're stubborn?" "Constantly," she said, smiling back. "It's my best quality." Jinwoo laughed, a real, genuine laugh, and Kiyoma felt something click into place inside her chest. This was what she'd been searching for. Not grand gestures or empty promises, just someone who saw her, truly saw her, and chose to stay anyway. "Teach me something," she said suddenly. "What?" "Something about you, your world. I want to understand." Jinwoo considered, then gestured toward the living room. "Come." He showed her his collection of old books, Korean poetry, philosophy, history, things that contradicted everything she thought she knew about him. "My mother used to read to me," he explained softly. "Before everything fell apart. These remind me that I'm more than what I became." Kiyoma picked up a worn volume, her fingers tracing the embossed cover. "Read me something." And he did. His voice, deep and soothing, filled the space between them with words about longing and loss and the quiet strength of enduring. When he finished, Kiyoma was crying. "Why are you crying?" Jinwoo asked, alarmed. "Because it's beautiful," she whispered. "And so are you." Jinwoo set the book aside and pulled her into his arms. She went willingly, burying her face in his chest as he held her close. I don't know what this is, he murmured into her hair. But I don't want it to end. Then don't let it, Kiyoma said. And for one perfect moment, they both believed it could be that simple. The doorbell shattered the peace. Jin-woo stiffened immediately, his entire demeanor shifting. The softness vanished, replaced by cold calculation. Stay here, he ordered, his voice sharp. Jin-woo, stay. He moved toward the door, and Kiyoma watched as he checked a hidden panel in the wall. Guns, knives, things she didn't want to think about. He grabbed a handgun and tucked it into the back of his jeans before opening the door. Minjun stood in the hallway, his expression grim. We have a problem, he said in Korean. Jin-woo stepped outside, closing the door behind him. But Kiyoma could still hear their voices, low and urgent. She crept closer, her heart pounding. Lee Sang-ho knows about the girl, Minjun was saying. He's already put out feelers. If he finds her, he won't. Jin-woo, you need to cut her loose. Send her back to wherever she came from. This is too dangerous. No. You're compromised. For the first time in 10 years, you're compromised, and it's going to get her killed. Silence. Then Jin-woo's voice, colder than Kiyoma had ever heard it. I'll handle it. Will you? Or will you get her killed like you got Soo-min killed? The sound of flesh hitting flesh. A grunt, then footsteps. Kiyoma scrambled back as the door flew open. Jin-woo stormed inside, his knuckles bloody, his face a mask of fury. What did he mean? Kiyoma demanded. What did he mean, like you got Soo-min killed? Jin-woo didn't answer. He paced the length of the room like a caged animal, his shoulders rigid. Jin-woo, talk to me. You need to leave. The words hit her like a physical blow. What? You need to leave, now. I'll arrange for protection, a new identity if necessary, but you can't stay here. Why? Because your friend said... Because he's right, Jin-woo roared, spinning to face her. Everyone I care about dies, Kiyoma. My father, my mother, my sister, and if you stay, you'll be next. Is that what you want? Tears blurred Kiyoma's vision. That's not fair. Life isn't fair. I learned that when I was 7 years old. His voice cracked. I won't watch you die because of me. So you're just going to push me away after everything? Yes. You're a coward, Kiyoma spat, anger overtaking her hurt. You talk about being strong, about surviving, but you're too scared to even try. You'd rather be alone than risk being happy. I'm keeping you alive. No. She stepped closer, her voice shaking. You're keeping yourself safe. Because it's easier to be empty than to risk feeling something real. Jin-woo's face contorted with pain. Get out! Fine. Kiyoma grabbed her purse. Minjun must have retrieved it, and headed for the door. But before she left, she turned back. You know what the saddest part is? She said softly. I actually believed you were different. I believed you could let someone in, but you're just like everyone else who's ever hurt me. Too broken to try. She didn't wait for a response. She walked out, her heart shattering with every step. Behind her, she heard something crash. Glass, maybe, or a life breaking apart. She didn't look back. Jin-woo stood in the wreckage of his living room, surrounded by shattered glass and broken promises. He'd done the right thing. He'd protected her. So why did it feel like he'd just made the biggest mistake of his life? 3 days. It had been 3 days since Kiyoma left and Jin-woo was unraveling. He threw himself into work, dealt with Lee Sang-ho personally, eliminated the threat, restored order. But none of it mattered. Every quiet moment was filled with her voice, her laugh, the way she'd looked at him like he was worth saving. Minjun had apologized. Jin-woo had forgiven him, but the words still echoed. You're compromised. He was, completely, utterly. And he didn't want to fix it. On the 4th day, Jin-woo found himself standing outside the hotel where Kiyoma worked. He'd had her followed, not to control her, but to make sure she was safe. She was, but she looked hollow. He watched through the glass doors as she checked in a guest, her smile professional but empty. The light that had burned so bright in his penthouse was gone. He'd done that. He'd taken her fire and snuffed it out. Boss! Jin-woo turned to find one of his men approaching. What? There's been a development. Kiyoma's ex, Daniel. He's been making threats, says she humiliated him. He's drunk, angry, and he knows where she lives. Ice flooded Jin Woo's veins. Is she in danger? Could be. He's unpredictable. Jin Woo didn't hesitate. Get the car. Kiyoma sat in her tiny apartment, staring at the wall. She'd cried for 2 days straight. Then the tears had dried up, leaving only numbness behind. She'd been so stupid, falling for a man she barely knew, believing that one kiss could mean something real. She'd let herself hope again, and hope had betrayed her, just like it always did. A knock at the door startled her. Chai, open up. We need to talk. Daniel. Her blood ran cold. She'd been avoiding him, ignoring his calls and messages. She'd thought he'd give up eventually. Go away, Daniel. I just want to talk, please. Something in his voice made her hesitate. He sounded off, slurred. You're drunk, she called through the door. Come back tomorrow. No, we're talking now. The door handle rattled. Kiyoma's heart leapt into her throat. She grabbed her phone, fingers shaking as she dialed. Who? The police? Jin Woo? Before she could decide, the door burst open. Daniel stood in the doorway, his eyes wild, his face flushed with alcohol and rage. You made me look like a fool, he snarled. Kiyoma backed away, her pulse thundering. Daniel, you need to leave. Kissing some random guy right in front of me? Who do you think you are? Someone who deserves better than you, Kiyoma shot back, her fear giving way to anger. Now get out. Daniel lunged. Kiyoma screamed. And then Jin Woo was there. He'd come through the still open door like a storm, grabbing Daniel and slamming it against the wall with a force that rattled the pictures hanging there. Touch her again, Jin Woo growled in English, his voice lethal, and you won't live long enough to regret it. Daniel struggled, but Jin Woo's grip was ironclad. Who the hell are you? Someone who actually values her. Jin Woo leaned in close. You had something precious and you threw it away, so now you get nothing. Not her time, not her tears, nothing. Do you understand? Daniel nodded frantically, and Jin Woo released him. He stumbled out of the apartment without another word. Silence fell. Kiyoma stood frozen, her chest heaving, her mind struggling to catch up. Jin Woo turned to her, his eyes searching her face. Are you hurt? She shook her head mutely. Kiyoma, why are you here? Her voice came out broken. You told me to leave. You said... I know what I said. Jin Woo crossed the room, stopping just inches from her. And I was wrong. I was so wrong. Tears spilled down Kiyoma's cheeks. You hurt me. I know, and I'll spend the rest of my life making up for it if you'll let me. He cupped her face gently, his thumbs wiping away her tears. I've spent 10 years convinced that loving someone was a death sentence. But these past few days without you? That was worse than dying. Because I was alive, but I wasn't living. Jin Woo. You were right. I was a coward. I was so terrified of losing you that I pushed you away first. But I don't want to be that person anymore. His voice cracked. I want to be the man you saw in me. The one who's worthy of your fire. Kiyoma's hands came up to cover his. What if it's too dangerous? What if... Then we'll face it together. I can't promise you safety, Kiyoma. My world is brutal and unforgiving. But I can promise you this. I will fight for you. I will protect you. And I will never, ever push you away again. How do I know you won't change your mind? Jin Woo pulled her close, resting his forehead against hers. Because for the first time in my life, I'm choosing love over fear. And I'm choosing you. Kiyoma closed her eyes, fresh tears streaming down her face. I'm still angry with you. I know. And it's going to take time for me to trust you again. I know that too. But... She opened her eyes, meeting his gaze. I choose you too, even though you're reckless and dangerous and completely insane. A smile broke across Jin Woo's face. Genuine, relieved, beautiful. So are you, apparently. And then he kissed her. It was softer than the first time, but no less intense. A promise sealed in touch. A future written in the press of lips and the tangle of hands. When they finally pulled apart, both of them were breathless. What happens now? Kiyoma whispered. Now? Jin Woo tucked a curl behind her ear. Now we figure it out. Together. Together, Kiyoma repeated, the word tasting like hope. And for the first time in 4 days, she believed it. 6 months later, The charity gala was in full swing, Seoul's elite, mingling beneath crystal chandeliers, champagne flowing like water. Kioma adjusted her emerald green gown, still not quite used to these events. But Jinwoo's hand found the small of her back, grounding her. "You okay?" he murmured. "Perfect," she said, smiling up at him. And she meant it. The past 6 months hadn't been easy. Jinwoo's world was everything he'd warned her about. Dangerous, complicated, demanding. There had been close calls, sleepless nights, moments when Kioma questioned if she'd made the right choice. But there had also been mornings waking up in his arms, late-night conversations about everything and nothing. The way he'd surprised her with a ticket to Lagos so she could see her family, and went with her, charming her mother despite the language barrier. He was trying. They both were. And slowly, impossibly, it was working. "Mr. Kang." A businessman approached, bowing slightly. "I wanted to discuss the merger." "Tomorrow," Jinwoo said smoothly. "Tonight, I'm here with my girlfriend." The word still made Kioma's heart flutter. Girlfriend. The businessman left and Jinwoo led her onto the terrace, away from the crowd. The Seoul skyline glittered before them, 1,000 lights against the darkness. "Do you remember the first thing you ever said to me?" Jinwoo asked. Kioma laughed. "Can you kiss me? I want to make him jealous." Not exactly romantic. No, but it was honest and brave. He turned to face her, his expression serious. "You taught me that, you know. How to be brave." "Me? You're the one who runs a criminal empire." "That's not bravery, that's survival." He took her hands in his. "But choosing to love you, to let you love me, that was the bravest thing I've ever done." Kioma's throat tightened. "Jinwoo. I know we've only been together 6 months. I know there's still so much we're figuring out. But I also know that I don't want to spend another day without you in it." He reached into his jacket pocket and pulled out a small velvet box. Kioma's breath caught. "I'm not asking you to marry me," Jinwoo said quickly, a nervous smile playing at his lips. "Not yet. I know you need time and I want to do this right. But I am asking you to build a future with me, to take the next step." He opened the box, revealing a delicate silver ring with a deep purple stone, the exact color of the dress she'd worn the night they met. "This is a promise," he continued softly. "A promise that I'm all in. That no matter what comes, I'm choosing you, every single day." Tears blurred Kioma's vision as she stared at the ring, then at the man holding it. The dangerous, broken, beautiful man who'd somehow become her home. "You know I'm still going to challenge you," she said, her voice thick with emotion. "Still going to call you out when you're being stubborn. I'm counting on it. And I'm going to drag you to Lagos at least twice a year. Already cleared my schedule? And sometimes I'm going to need space, need to be my own person outside of your world." Jinwoo's smile softened. "I wouldn't have it any other way. You're not mine to own, Kioma. You're mine to love. There's a difference." Fresh tears spilled down her cheeks. "Then yes. Yes to the promise. Yes to the future. Yes to all of it." Jinwoo slipped the ring onto her finger, then pulled her into his arms, kissing her like she was oxygen and he'd been drowning. When they finally broke apart, both of them laughing and crying, Kioma rested her head against his chest. "Who would have thought?" she murmured. "That one reckless kiss would lead to this." Jinwoo pressed his lips to her forehead. "Best favor anyone's ever asked me for. Even though I had no idea who you were? Especially because you had no idea. You saw me, Kioma. Not the reputation, not the fear, just me." She pulled back to look at him, her hand coming up to trace the scar on his jaw, the one she'd touched that first morning in his penthouse. "I still see you," she whispered. "All of you. The darkness and the light. And I'm not going anywhere." "Neither am I." They stood there on the terrace, wrapped in each other's arms, the city sprawling beneath them like a promise of all the tomorrows they'd face together. Inside, the gala continued. Music drifted out through the open doors, a slow, romantic melody. "Dance with me," Jinwoo said suddenly. "Here? Why not? You asked me for a kiss in front of 100 people. I think I can handle a dance." Kioma laughed, the sound bright and free and full of joy. "When you put it that way," he pulled her close, one hand at her waist, the other holding hers against his heart. They swayed gently to the music, lost in their own world. Kioma? Hmm? Thank you. For what? For being reckless enough to approach a stranger. For being brave enough to stay. For teaching me that some risks are worth taking. She looked up at him, her eyes shining. Thank you for catching me when I fell. Always, he promised. For as long as you'll let me. And as they danced beneath the stars, Kioma thought about that night 6 months ago, how desperate and broken she'd felt, how certain she was that happiness was something that happened to other people. She'd walked into that lounge looking for revenge. Instead, she'd found redemption. She'd found love. Not the fairy tale kind that came easily, but the real kind, messy and complicated and worth fighting for. Jinwoo spun her gently and she laughed, the sound carrying out into the night. Somewhere across the city, in a different life, Daniel was probably still trying to figure out what went wrong. But Kioma didn't think about him anymore. She thought about tomorrow, and the day after that, and all the days she'd spend with the man who'd started as a stranger and become her everything. I love you, she said suddenly, the words spilling out before she could stop them. Jinwoo's arms tightened around her, his voice rough with emotion. I love you too, more than I thought I could love anything. They kissed again, soft and sweet and full of promise. And in that moment, beneath the Seoul sky, surrounded by the life they were building together, Kioma understood something profound. Sometimes the best things in life come from the most reckless decisions. Sometimes you have to risk everything to find what you've been searching for all along. And sometimes, just sometimes, a single kiss can change your entire world. Kioma and Jinwoo's story started with one bold request and led to forever. Their journey proves that love finds us when we're brave enough to take the leap. What's the biggest risk you've ever taken for love, or the one you're still too afraid to take? Share your story below. Sometimes, just putting it into words is the first step toward your own happy ending. And if this story moved you, hit that like button and subscribe, because everyone deserves a love story that feels this real. What should we explore next? Drop your ideas in the comments.